Let me start out by giving you some backstory for this world. This world is very young, about 3,000 years old, with a single city filled with dwarves, humans, gnomes, orcs, and halflings. Everything outside this city was controlled by elves. At the center of our city is a cave known as Gaia's Womb. This cave will occasionally open to release a new race of people to be introduced to our world. Our party, who I refer to as the Womb Raiders in order to piss them off, was a group of nobodies. However, we nobodies, an elderly halfling minstrel, a naive half-orc holy guard, a quiet human fisherman, a hyperactive halfling troublemaker, a cowardly gnomish wizard, and myself, a stubborn dwarven blacksmith, and adoptive father to the latter of the two, along with 60 other children, were tasked with opening the cave permanently by the high priestess who had received a prophecy from Gaia herself. After a fairly traumatic ritual to open the cave from the wrong side, we were almost immediately met with a war between goblins and an army of kobolds led by a gold dragon going by the title of the Elder. We met with the goblins, first talking with their tribe leaders, then encountering some strange emo goth goblins obsessed with blood and death, the lacking stock of their respective tribes. We dubbed the latter Hemogoblins, and were on our way. Once that was done, it was time to have the pants-shitting experience of meeting a hostile adult dragon at first level. Somehow, through amazing charisma checks, we convinced the goblins and dragon to agree to a ceasefire so that they could escape Gaia's Womb together. It was at this peace summit that both the dragon and the goblins alerted us to the existence of two Tarrasque slumbering slightly deeper in the cave. After slipping past the slumbering breeding pair of Tarrasque, we continued our adventure deeper in the cave. These, however, are stories for another time. We eventually returned to the first section of Gaia's Womb, 4 levels stronger, and with the tools needed to open the cave permanently. It was then that we noticed that one Tarrasque was not where we had last seen it, and we heard loud stomping ahead of us. We knew there was only one option to save our new allies and fulfill our duty to Gaia. We managed to stealth past the creature and organize the goblins meeting us at the exit. The goblins had small tunnels allowing them to sneak around the area. The dragon, however, was not as lucky. As we tried to escape on the Elder's back, the glint of his scale alerted the Tarrasque to our presence. The wizard, bard, paladin, and I used nearly all of our spells to hold this mountain of a beast at bay, just when it seemed we may reach a cavern too small for the lumbering titan pursuing us. It leapt and bit the Elder, taking off one of his hind legs, causing him to plummet towards the cave floor. Our saving grace was the final spell in the wizard's repertoire, a last-minute featherfall. This invoked extreme amounts of parental pride in my character and, for a strange reason, myself. We retreated with the now lamed dragon to the cavern that would be our temporary salvation and started the ritual to open the cave. As the doors opened, a vertical beam of light struck our eyes, blinding most of our new allies who had not experienced this amount of light before. Knowing it was their way out, every goblin and kobold present rushed through the doors and were greeted by the high priest. This religious moment was somewhat marred by the high priest trying to greet a group of red and green blurs who were running past him and screaming obscenities in Goblin and Draconic. It was then that we heard grinding of massive amounts of rock. The Tarrasque was coming. The GM, realizing his mistake of throwing the living embodiment of the phrase "fuck you" at a drained 5th level party, decided that each of us would be allowed to create a second 5th level character to help combat this overpowered monstrosity. Additionally, we were allowed to metagame the hell out of this encounter. We had no doubt in our minds that a team of 5th level rangers with the Colossus Slayer ability and an entire city to hide in would be able to take down the Tarrasque eventually. Unfortunately, this meant there would be many casualties in-game. Even worse was the additional out-of-game experience of having to sit through at the very least 4 hours of real-world time in combat, only to likely still not have a city left by the end of it. I dreaded the next session would be a daunting test of mental and emotional endurance, as I would watch my cleric's many adopted children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren die as fodder to a mindless armored mass of teeth and claws. That is when the light bulb went off like a 4th of July firework. I texted the GM to get his interpretation of a rule. Once I confirmed his ruling, I sent out the group text. It took some convincing of a few of our players that were a bit more faint of heart. However, upon explaining that if it worked, we could save everyone in the city, they yielded. Thus, we organized our group of extra 5th level characters. As the Tarrasque slowly dug its way towards our party, we tried to convince everyone to evacuate the temple and eventually the city. The party was prepared for their last stand against the Tarrasque, saying their goodbyes to those they could when they heard excited screaming. The source of this out-of-place cackling was our new characters. We had adopted the Hemogoblins. Glizar the Immortal, Snailbrain the First, Gobbo D. Goner, Gobbo D. Gook, Crack Te Gobbo, and Toadface. After my goblin, Crack Te Gobbo, made a quick sleight of hand check. Remember that sleight of hand check, dear listener. These death-obsessed goblins quickly rushed back into the cave towards the Tarrasque. Now, dear listener, you might be wondering, what do these goblins have that can stop a Tarrasque that the party didn't? What makes them so special? Or, clearly, there is no way that a normal goblin could have enough damage output to end a Tarrasque in a more timely fashion than the aforementioned group of rangers. Well, dear listener, I'll explain. An amazing GM, one Matthew Mercer, once made a homebrew class called the Blood Hunter. The most important mechanic for our story is the ability Curse of Mutual Suffering. With this ability, you curse a creature so that the next time they damage you, they take the same damage dealt. I had been able to convince our GM to allow us to voluntarily take any attacks as a maximum damage critical hit. So while the goblins did not have the proper damage output to kill the Tarrasque in 6 rounds, the Tarrasque itself did. The first to release his curse upon the Tarrasque was young Snailbrain, who charged in, stabbing its tunneling maw in the gums and provoking a chomp. Seeing his doom clasp down around him, Snailbrain came to the realization and with panic exclaimed,
"Wait, I'm gonna die?"
before a gory, toothy end. Upon chomping the young goblin, the Tarrasque received a bite mark on its side the size of its own maw. Next was Glizar the Immortal. As an order of the Lycanthrope Blood Hunter, she went full anime transformation to become a werebat, quickly stabbing 2 stalactites into the roof of our quarry's mouth before impaling herself on the teeth below, giving the Tarrasque another dose of its own medicine. Last of our ranks were Crack Te Gobbo and Toadface. These two had taken a level in Tempest Cleric and were holding a concentration for the Bless spell on our party. They had previously kept back, encouraging the others as the Tarrasque made its way through its earthen barrier. When his time came, Crack lunged into the Tarrasque's mouth, deciding to reverse roles even more by biting on one of the enormous teeth closing in on him. After amplifying the Curse of Mutual Suffering, he strengthened the blow with his Wrath of the Storm ability, cracking the tooth that bit down on him. By the time our regular party approached the scene of the battle, Toadface, the last one standing, with all the authority she could muster, yelled,
"No, let us go to our destiny,"
and leapt towards the Tarrasque. Our original cleric and paladin turned the corner just in time to witness the final blow. She chose to utilize the same tactic as her fellow cleric, shattering the previously cracked tooth in the process as a Tarrasque-sized bite mark appeared on the monstrosity's throat. With that, the Tarrasque crashed to the ground, felled without slaying a single civilian. As the sounds of the World Eater came to a stop, the entire city had their hearts drop out of their throats. We made sure that their story was told to every being in the city, and the city mourned the loss of the heroes who died for a people they had never met. When I approached the leader of the goblin tribes to help make the memorial, I asked if there were any words he deemed appropriate for the memorial. I already knew what he was going to say. After all, I had planted those words myself as Crack. Remember that sleight of hand check? I had planted Crack Tegabo's final poem in his tribe leader's back pocket. Now, the memorial to the squad of Hemogoblins stands tall, a sculpture of 6 goblins with weapons drawn, rushing towards a toothy maw, and underneath reads, "There once were some gobos from cave, who always had dreamed of the grave. They took up their arms, did Tarrasque and selves harm, saved the world from the fate that they craved.